Hey everybody, back for our study group time. So study group. So for those of you tuning in or coming on board, wanting a free reading, that was in the last hour. So this is all study group time. My hair is like doing some crazy things today. I don't understand what's going on there. Okay, so study group time. So we're doing A New Earth by Eckhart Tolle. So what we do essentially during study group is I basically read through the book and then I stop, give commentary, and then after I'm done with the selection of that day, then we can discuss that. And you can, or personal readings, that was in the last hour, so we're not doing that in this hour, okay? So for those of you who are tuning in for a personal reading, unfortunately I can't accommodate y'all. So everything is gonna have to go through you'll have to come back on Friday, okay? All right, so let's get started here. And go ahead and just, hey Cassidy, hello, I know I'm seeing everybody. Awesome. All right, cool. Oh, you're welcome, Miss Jenny. Okay, so let's get started here. So I'm on what chapter am I on? Well, it doesn't matter what chapter we're on. I'm on page 46 of the book. So wanting, the need for more. Remember, that's what we're doing, okay? All right, so let's get started here. The ego identifies with having, but its satisfaction in having is a relatively shallow and short-lived one. Concealed within it remains a deep-seated sense of dissatisfaction, of incompleteness, of not enough. I don't have enough yet, by which the ego really means I am not enough yet. As we have seen, having the concept of ownership is a fiction created by the ego to give itself solidity and permanency and make itself stand out, make itself special. Since you cannot find yourself through having, however, there is another more powerful drive underneath it that pertains to the structure of the ego, the need for more, which we could also call wanting. No ego can last for long without the need for more. Therefore, wanting keeps the ego alive much more than having. The ego wants to want more than it wants to have. And so the shallow satisfaction of having is always replaced by more wanting. This is the psychological need for more. That is to say, more things to identify with. It is an addictive need, not an authentic one. In some cases, the psychological need for more, or the feeling of not enough, that is so characteristic of the ego becomes transferred to the physical level and so turns into insatiable hunger. The sufferers of bulimia will often make themselves vomit so they can continue eating. Their mind is hungry, not their body. This eating disorder would become healed if the sufferers, instead of being identified with their mind, could get in touch with their body and so feel the true needs of the body rather than the pseudo needs of the egoic mind. Some egos know what they want and pursue their aim with grim and ruthless determination. Genghis Khan, Stalin, Hitler, to give just a few larger-than-life examples. The energy behind their wanting, however, creates an opposing energy of equal intensity that in the end leads to their downfall. In the meantime, they make themselves and many others unhappy, or in the larger-than-life examples, create hell on earth. Most egos have conflicting wants. They want different things at different times, or may not even know what they want except that they don't want what is, the present moment. Unease, restlessness, boredom, anxiety, dissatisfaction are all the result of unfulfilled wanting. Wanting is structural, so no amount of content can provide lasting fulfillment as long as the mental structure remains in place. Intense wanting that has no specific object can often be found in the still developing ego of teenagers, some of who are in a permanent state of negativity and dissatisfaction. The physical needs for food, water, shelter, clothing, and basic comforts could be easily met for all humans on the planet. Were it not for the imbalance of resources created by the insane and rapacious need for more, the greed of the ego. It finds collective expression in the economic structures of this world, such as the huge corporations, which are egoic entities that compete with each other for more. Their only blind aim is profit. They pursue that aim with absolute ruthlessness. Nature, animals, people, even their own employees are no more than digits on a balance sheet, lifeless objects to be used, then discarded. The thought forms of me and mine, of more than, of I want, I need, I must have, and of not enough pertain not to content but the structure of the ego. The content is interchangeable. As long as you don't recognize those thought forms within yourself, as long as they remain unconscious, you will believe in what they say. You will be condemned to acting out those unconscious thoughts, condemned to seeking and not finding. Because when these thought forms operate, no passion, place, person, or condition will ever satisfy you. No content will ever satisfy you. As long as the egoic structure remains in place, no matter what you have to or get, you won't be happy. You will always be looking for something else that promises greater fulfillment, that promises to make your incomplete sense of self complete and fill that sense of lack you feel within. Identification with the body. Apart from objects, another basic form of identification is with my body. Firstly, the body is male or female, and so the sense of being a man or woman takes up a significant part of most people's sense of self. Gender becomes identity. Identification with gender is encouraged at an early age, and it forces you into a role, into conditioned patterns of behavior that affect all aspects of your life, not just sexually. It is a role many people become completely trapped in, even more so in some of the traditional societies than in Western culture, where identification with gender is beginning to lessen somewhat. In some traditional cultures, the worst fate a woman can have is to be unwed or barren, and for a man to lack sexual potency and not be able to produce children. Life's fulfillment is perceived to be fulfillment of one's gender identity. In the West, it is the physical appearance of the body that contributes greatly to the sense of who you think you are, its strengths or weaknesses, its perceived beauty or ugliness relative to others. For many people, their sense of self-worth is intimately bound up with their physical strength, good looks, fitness, and external appearance. Many feel a diminished sense of self-worth because they perceive their body as ugly or imperfect. In some cases, the mental image or concept of my body is a complete distortion of reality. A young woman may think of herself as overweight and therefore starve herself when in fact she is quite thin. She cannot see her body anymore. All she sees is the mental concept of her body, which says, I am fat, or I will become fat. At the root of this condition lies identification with the mind. As people have become more and more mind-identified, which is the intensification of egoic dysfunction, there has also been a dramatic increase in the incidence of anorexia in recent decades. If the sufferer could look at her body without the interfering judgments of her mind, or even recognize those judgments for what they are instead of believing in them, or better still, if she could feel her body from within, this would initiate her healing. Those who are identified with their good looks, physical strength, or abilities experience suffering when those attributes begin to fade and disappear, as of course they will. Their very identity that was based on them is then threatened with collapse. In either case, ugly or beautiful, people derive a significant part of their identity, be it negative or positive, from their body. To be more precise, they derive their identity from the I thought that they erroneously attach to the mental image or concept of their body, which, after all, is no more than a physical form that shares the destiny of all forms, impermanence, and ultimately decay. Equating the physical sense perceived body that is destined to grow old, wither, and die with I always leads to suffering sooner or later. To refrain from identifying with the body doesn't mean that you neglect, despise, or no longer care for it. If it is strong, beautiful, or vigorous, you can enjoy and appreciate those attributes while they last. You can also improve the body's condition through right nutrition and exercise. If you don't equate the body with who you are, when beauty fades, vigor diminishes, or the body becomes incapacitated, this will not affect your sense of worth or identity in any way. In fact, as the body begins to weaken, the formless dimension, the light of consciousness, can shine more easily through the fading form. It is not just people with good or near perfect bodies who are likely to equate it with who they are. You can just as easily identify with a problematic body and make the body's imperfection, illness, or disability into your identity. You may then think and speak of yourself as a sufferer of this or that chronic illness or disability. You receive a great deal of attention from doctors and others who constantly conform to your conceptual identity as a sufferer or a patient. You then unconsciously cling to the illness because it has become the most important part of you perceive yourself to be. It has become another thought form with which the ego can identify. Once the ego has found an identity, it does not want to let go. Amazingly, but not infrequently, the ego, in search of a stronger identity, can and does create illness in order to strengthen itself through them. Feeling the inner body. Although body identification is one of the most basic forms of ego, the good news is that it is also the one that you can most easily go beyond. This is done not by trying to convince yourself that you are not your body, but by shifting your attention from the external form of your body and from thoughts about your body. Beautiful, ugly, strong, weak, too fat, too thin, the feeling to the feeling of aliveness inside it. No matter what your body's appearance is on the outer level, beyond the outer form, it is an intensely alive energy field. If you are not familiar with inner body awareness, close your eyes for a moment and find out if there is life inside your hands. Don't ask your mind. It will say, I can't feel anything. Probably it will also say, give me something more interesting to talk about. So instead of asking your mind, go to the hands directly. By this, I mean become aware of the subtle feeling of aliveness inside them. It is there. You just have to go there with your attention to notice it. You may get a slight tingling sensation at first, then a feeling of energy or aliveness. If you hold your attention in your hands for a while, the sense of aliveness will intensify. Some people won't even have to close their eyes. They will be able to feel their inner hands. At the same time as they read this, then go to your feet, keep your attention there for a minute or so, and begin to feel your hands and feet at the same time. Then incorporate other parts of the body, legs, arms, abdomen, chest, and so on, into the feeling until you are aware of the inner body as a global sense of aliveness. What I call the inner body isn't really the body anymore, but life energy, the bridge between form and formless. Make it a habit to feel the inner body as often as you can. After a while, you won't need to close your eyes anymore to feel it. For example, see if you can feel the inner body whenever you listen to someone. It almost seems like a paradox. When you are in touch with the inner body, you are not identified with your body anymore. Nor are you identified with your mind. This is to say, you are no longer identified with form, but moving away from form identification towards formlessness, which we may also call being. It is your essence identity. Body awareness not only anchors you in the present moment, it is a doorway out of the prison that is the ego. It also strengthens the immune system and the body's ability to heal itself. I'll stop there because I want to talk about that for a little while. The body, because this has actually been an area in my life that I, for many years, struggled with. And this has not been an easy process for me to kind of move past or to work through, just because for myself. So here's where I'll start with this, and then we'll come back and I'll check some of your questions about what we're talking about. But when I was younger, I did not feel very attractive. I didn't feel like an attractive person. I didn't feel, and you know, it's I had relatives and cousins who were more attractive than I, and so I didn't feel like an attractive person. And there's an old picture of me when I was in school, and I didn't, you know, we couldn't afford the nicest clothes. You know, a lot of stuff was hand-me-downs or clothes that were donated through Goodwill, etc. So I had to wear a bunch of things that didn't necessarily fit on me well and fit properly, and I didn't always think of myself as an attractive person, and which is, when I think back now, I was a pretty cute kid actually, but yeah, I didn't think of myself as an attractive person, and as I got into middle school and then high school, I definitely attracted girls. I had girlfriends, you could say. I never had sex with a female in my life, but I had girlfriends. I had girls that were interested or attracted to me since like kindergarten, but I as far as actually having relationships with girls, I think I had 2 girlfriends. One was in middle school. What was her name? Letitia. I think her name was Letitia. She was my girlfriend in middle school. She was super cute. She was like big. She always had those like big dorky glasses, so she was a super cute girl. So Letitia was my first girlfriend, and then my second girlfriend was in high school, and her name was Lillian, I believe. And Lillian and I were boyfriend and girlfriend, and I think for myself, having a girlfriend was a way to deflect attention from my sexuality, because I didn't know what I was yet. I didn't know what my sexuality was. I didn't know I was a gay man, and so when I was in middle school, one way to deflect attention was simply just to have a girlfriend. And so I had a girlfriend named Letitia, who she was like all over me. She liked to love me. But I mean, she was sweet and super cute, and I liked her, but it wasn't like a sexual attraction. It was more of like a friendship attraction. So it felt more like a friendship. But that was the first one. And then Lillian, she was the second one. Lillian, interestingly enough, we were like boyfriend and girlfriend for like several months, like I want to say 6 or 7 months in high school. And again, it was a way for me to deflect attention and to not have the guys like pick on me or have the males pick on me. But having girls attracted to me wasn't the hard part. It was the males. First of all, you when you're in middle school and high school, it's not like you have a whole plethora of gay boys or gay males to choose from, because everyone's in hiding. This was back in the 90s, so you don't have the option of like being able to have a relationship in that way. The only option you have is a straight relationship. And so Lillian, I remember, she wanted to give me a gift for my birthday, so she went and had a shirt made for me, and the shirt was my name, right? And so I think in the front it had one thing, but in the back it had my name. But it had my name misspelled. So my last name being Marron, Marron, she misspelled it and spelled moron instead. She did not even realize that she had misspelled it. She just misspelled it. And I felt awful because she spent her money, she made this shirt. So I wore it. I wore it to school, and I chose to get teased, because I definitely got teased for that shirt. So on top of me being teased and being bullied for being gay, I was teased for having a shirt that said more on the back. But I think she appreciated the gesture, because once she realized what it actually said, she felt awful and she felt horrible. But I mean, I didn't want to hurt her feelings and not wear the shirt. So I was like, no, she just spent all her money and she made that for me. I gotta wear it. So I wore the shirt. But I didn't have options, and so because I didn't have the option to date a male, I didn't feel particularly attractive. And this was in the early days of the internet. You could get onto gay.com or gayhouston.com and chat with people, but you're still a kid. You're still like in high school. So it's not like you feel comfortable or safe to just randomly meet people. And I didn't have a car. I didn't have any of those things. But I didn't feel attractive. And then once you get into that online cycle where you talk to guys and they want a picture of you and you see a picture of them, you start to get really nitpicky about things that don't really matter. And a lot of people online and on social media and on the just get really picky over the stupidest superficial things that absolutely have nothing to do with nothing. And so I would send a picture. Of course, it's not like I could afford really nice pictures. I would just have to take a picture with my webcam or whatever. But it wasn't like I could take all these glamorous pictures. And so it wasn't easy for me to get attention and to feel attractive. And so I was already being bullied because I was gay. I was already being bullied because I was feminine. I was already being bullied because I wasn't this tough kid. So I was already being bullied, and then on top of that, I felt rejected by gay men, and I didn't feel attractive at all. And then on top of that, I had a stepfather who was very abusive. And then my father, didn't want me. So all these rejections became a norm for me. It became a pattern, and I was always trying to feel important or feel significant or feel like I had value or worth through trying to look attractive. And so I tried very hard to look attractive. I tried getting haircuts. I tried working out. I tried losing weight, which is part of the reason why I lost weight the first time, because when I was younger, I was a bit overweight. And so I lost like 60 pounds one year. When I left school that summer and came back 60 pounds lighter, I remember one of the guys, the hall guys, he was like, "What happened to you? Are you on drugs?" And I was like, "No, I just exercised every day. That's how I lost weight." And so, but he couldn't imagine why I lost all that weight. So once I lost weight, I felt much more confident. I felt better about myself. It really helped me to feel better. But it was a superficial sense of being. It was not real. It was just a superficial sense of well-being, a sense of value based on my physical appearance. And so it's this constant, my appearance matters, my appearance matters, my appearance matters. If I'm not worth anything, that's why I'm being rejected, and I must be not attractive either. So all these things set in, and then you start to establish your worth and value on your appearance, and then you just try to work even harder. And I did go through a period where I was making myself throw up, and I would eat, then I would throw up. I would eat, then I would throw up. So I did go through a period where I was doing it to myself as well. But there was a lot of that, like focusing on my appearance, that became an obsessiveness for me, to the point where I was like wanting to go into modeling or be a model when I was like in my younger 20s, which of course I didn't do that. But it was like I was trying to prove to myself that I had value or worth because of my appearance, because I didn't see any value or any more. I didn't see how much more value or worth I could offer this world besides my appearance. So that is what I based my value and worth on. And when I got rejected on a regular basis, or I wasn't getting, I wasn't falling in love and meeting my soulmate every chance I got, that obviously was just doing a number on me. So all of that contributed to that. But I understand and I identify with this. And a lot of people do that to this day. I talk to clients, and I have people that they base a lot of their sense of value and worth around what people look like. How tall is he going to be? Is he going to be buff? Is he going to be attractive? Oh, he's black. I don't date black guys. Like, you have people who base a lot of the worth or value on what people look like, whether it's a racist response or whether it's a response on their attractiveness based on whatever features they have. And it's sad because I have seen people go through life and spend their entire life alone or never having had a proper relationship because of that. And so whenever people ask me, when am I going to meet the right person, I kind of have to, like, if I pick up on that energy around them, I have to let them know, hey, here's some advice. Stop being picky. You need to be more open. Love comes in different ways, and it's not going to be based on someone's looks, and you won't be able to hold on to yours, so there's no point in being obsessed about that. I'm not saying you should go and look and find people that you don't feel are attractive to you or that you don't find attractive and force yourself to date them. You don't want to do that, because I did that. I forced myself to date. I was trying to prove to myself that I wasn't hooked on appearances, and instead I was just basically, that was hurtful to the person that I was in a relationship with, because that person had real feelings for me, and I was an asshole. So I wasn't appreciating that person for who they were. Again, basing a lot of value and worth on the physicality of a human being versus what's going on inside. What do they actually bring to the stage? How they are, so there's different ways of seeing value and worth. And now I try to look past whatever people are putting out that they believe is of value for them or that is their worth. I try to look past that, because what people think they're most valuable for is not what they're most valuable for. That's just what they believe. That's just what they've bought into, and they're basing their entire system around. That's not what it is. There's way more to a person than that. And so that's why I was telling the woman, the couple of people that I read for, I love catching people when they're just in their element and they're just like normal and like dress down, because I want to connect with the authentic version of that person. I don't want to just connect with the version of that person that person is only comfortable expressing or showing or sharing. And sometimes when you can break through the physicality of someone, you really dig into who they authentically are, and you see how much value, you see how much more there is to them in that way. So that's just my 2 cents about that. Let's go through here because I want to see what you guys are discussing. Yeah, and the gay culture is just really hard. Like, it is really hard to feel like you're accepted by other gay men because there's so much superficiality in that scene. And it's always been that way. When I would go to the clubs, same thing. When I would talk to people on chats, same thing. They base a lot of that on those things that don't really matter at the end of the day. So I feel fine, thank you. Ashley, it's like convoy. How do you feel? I feel fine, thank you for asking. Yeah, it was the weirdest thing. Like on Friday, I don't cancel often. I don't like to cancel because I know people like set their alarms, they prepare for this, and I get it, and that's why I feel a sense of like I have to be there unless I can't. And so what happened on Friday was about 30 minutes before my live, I was still in my last appointment of the day because I do my lives and my study groups on appointment day. So I have a day full of appointments, and then I will take a moment break, and then I'll do the live readings, and then I'll take a little break, and then I'll do my study group. And so on that day, 30 minutes before, I was in my last appointment, and it's a good thing it wasn't a psychic reading. It was just like advice. It was an advice session, but immediately we had a storm roll in, like a thunderstorm, and it was every time the barometric pressure changes extremely, I tend to be more sensitive to it, especially here, which is interesting because in Houston we have tons of thunderstorms. Here it's just a little more sensitive to it. So I notice that there's a cold front coming in, or I'll notice that the barometric pressure is changing based on a headache, and I'll get a subtle or light headache, and I'm like, okay, the barometric pressure might be changing. But I usually just take something and I'm fine. I don't really like make a big deal out about it because it's just a headache. It's no big deal. But this one just came on, and it just got more intense and more intense and more intense, and it was right here, right back here, and I was like, what the hell? And it was the kind of migraine where it kind of hurts to keep your eyes open, and it kind of hurts to hear sound and light, and I'm like, well, that's not a common type of headache that I get. So I was like, I don't think I'm going to be able to focus, and I took some aspirin, I took some things right before, and it just wasn't going away. So I was like, you know what, I'm not going to even force myself. I need to just call it quits for today and take a break. And actually, I'm glad I did, because I went to the couch, I took medicine, and I just laid there, and I laid there with my eyes closed for a good hour, and then it lightened up because I took like extra like ibuprofen. So I took a large dose ibuprofen. That helped some, but then that wasn't helping 100%. And then I vaped a little, and that the combination was what did it. And I was like, okay, I was good after that. So after that, I didn't feel it as intensely, and I was able to go for my normal walk. And after my walk, I felt fine. But then towards the end of the evening, when the ibuprofen started to wear out, that's when it started to get a little more obvious to me. And so I was like, okay, so I had to take another dose of ibuprofen. I went to sleep, woke up, and it was fine the next day. Didn't have anything to worry about. So I was fine the next day. And people were like, oh, you shouldn't mix medicines. I'm like, I'm not mixing medicines. It's just vaping and ibuprofen. That's all it is. Calm down. I'm not pulling a Whitney, y'all. I'm not like drowning in the tub. Okay, Miss Jenny, good question. Miss Jenny 18. Cassidy, how do you get to that point where you don't care about weight? And even though she's asking Cassidy, I'll answer it myself. So here's the thing. I try not to pay attention to my physical body anymore, because I spent so much time obsessing about it when I was younger that now I just enjoy my body for whatever it is. I am 38, going to be 39. No, I'm 39 now. I just turned 39. What the hell am I talking about? I'm 39 now. I'm getting older, but things are starting to hang. Things are starting to hang lower than I'm used to. Skin is no longer bouncing back. So things are starting to just do their thing as people get older. And I don't want to run into the same issue that I've seen several people run into, where the moment that they hit that period in their life where their body gets older and it's an obvious change, they freak out and they start going through a midlife crisis because they can't handle it. I don't want to go through that. I'm like, no, I'm getting older. I'm just going to embrace it, accept it. Gives me a reason to be a bitch. Because, when you get older, you have a reason to just be bitchier for some reason because you've been through enough, you've seen enough. So for me, I don't pay as much attention to my body. But this is what I do, right? Because I've noticed that the less I concern myself with what my body's doing, or the less I concern myself with what I ideally would want for my body, the easier it is to take care of my body. So like when I wake up in the morning, I get up, I sit at the edge of the bed and I just kind of sit there and breathe. And I take deep breaths because I'm feeling my body again. And when I wake up every morning, I am used to not, it's going to sound weird because most people don't relate to me with this. When I wake up, I don't immediately recognize my body. My body feels like a foreign thing to me. And so it takes me a moment to kind of just embrace the reality that I'm in a physical body. And so I wake up and I sit at the edge of the bed and I just breathe. And I breathe in and I feel my body. So I just get a sense of my body, what it feels like, what is this feeling, what is that feeling. And then once I feel like I'm situated in my body, then I get up, go to the bathroom. All guys usually pee first thing in the morning, so I go and pee. And then I will look at myself in the morning. I will look at myself and I'll look at myself in the mirror. And that's it. That's it. I don't do anything. I just look at myself because I need to remember who I am in this moment. I'm Ferny in this lifetime. This is who I am. Okay, cool. And then I get on with my day. That's the only time I really look at myself for several hours because I don't look at myself again. Because what does it matter? What does it matter what I look like? It's what I feel like. That's what's important, right? So then I have to look at myself again when I fix my hair for my lives or for, work, and then that's it. And I don't really look at myself again for the rest of the day. So I try to avoid looking at myself in the mirror not because I don't want to look at myself, but when I don't look at myself often, when I do see myself, I recognize myself and I'm like, oh, you look, hey, handsome, how you doing? And so it's almost like you look at yourself enough to appreciate what you're in, but you don't look at yourself enough to become obsessive over what's wrong or what isn't perfect. So it's almost like acknowledging your physical self, being in this body, but not enough where you're going to sit there and obsess about everything. And that's how I handle it. And then for me, it's more important to feel good in my body. So it's less about looking good in my body and it's more about feeling good in my body. There are days where, I literally shave maybe once or twice a week. I don't shave often just because I don't like it, but that's what I do. So I usually shave on Tuesdays. That lasts me for the rest of the week. So I will be shaving for the rest of the week. And then on maybe Sunday or Monday, I'll shave again. But I'll start growing hair and I'll start getting darkness here, and of course, because that happens, right? And that's okay. And so by the end of the week or by Sunday or Monday, I kind of look like a grizzly, and then I'll have my hat on or whatever. But it's like, it doesn't matter. I ain't going anywhere. What does it matter? But it's more about what I feel like, and so I focus more on how I feel. If my body doesn't feel good, or if I don't feel well in my body, that's an issue for me. So I have to find ways to feel good in my body regardless of the condition of my body. My body's not perfect. I've got problem areas. My knees are a little bit on the weaker side. My joints in this are a little bit on the weaker side, and I tend to my energy levels can kind of fluctuate, so I have to manage my energy levels. So for me, the only issues with my body are technically the joints sometimes when they act up, and then also whenever I am having difficulty concentrating because of my ADD. So that's pretty much the only issues that I have with my body, and I find ways to cope with it as best as I can, because I'm not going to let my ADD stop me from being able to do what I'm doing right now. I'm not going to let my joints keep me from walking on the trails, because I get so much joy from just the experience of walking on the trails, even on the days that I don't really feel like it. Because once you don't do anything for a while and you sit around and do nothing, your body feels like crap. And so when I go walking, it just almost gets things moving and shifting and blood flowing, and it just feels so much better, physically feel better after my little walk. And so I look forward to my walks. And some days my body does not want to go walking. It's more sensitive, or it feels more prone to like tightness or whatever. So sometimes if I need a vape just to go for my walk, that's what I do, because I'm gonna go for my walk, and I know once I'm done with my walk, I will feel amazing. So for me, it's more of just like getting used to the body and what it's doing and how it's operating. But I just don't care as much about my appearance. I mean, granted, I don't want to look like a crazy person on camera or anything like that, but I don't sit there and obsess about my looks. And even I used to, especially when I would get on camera and record videos, I was like, let me use this filter, let me use this, let me use that. And I'm not saying I don't use filters, but I try to avoid filters that make my skin look perfectly like smooth. I try to avoid filters that make me look inhuman. I try to avoid filters that make me look like something drastically different than what I naturally look like. I only use filters to accentuate or enhance what is already there. So, and it's funny because, you know, like right here on camera, you know, if you're like examining me and looking at it, I can say, oh my God, my skin looks so imperfect. It doesn't look like that in person though, because the lighting in the camera, that's what it does. But I don't give myself a hard time about it. I don't give myself like, oh my God, you look like this in front of the camera. They're gonna think you have all these who gives a rat's ass? Like, it doesn't matter. You're not here for my skin. You're not here to get skin tips. You're here to get spiritual advice. And that's what you're here for. So to hell with the skin, to hell with anything else of it. So I just don't sit there. I don't have the time. I don't have the energy, and it's just not that important to me. So you kind of have to go into that perspective that what does it matter? What the hell does it matter what you look like, what filter you use, etc.? I'm like, what does it matter? I always get irked sometimes when I see people and every single picture is obviously over filtered, where they have no pores, they have no identifiable features, they kind of just look like a faded blob in the background, and and they feel very, very attractive. And I'm just like, you look crazy. What are you doing? Let me just see you. I just want to see you. I'd rather see you than see a version of you that you feel comfortable with. So, but that's the thing with the physical body. But the physical body is a tool. It's here to serve our purpose and to help us achieve the experiences we're here to have. That's all it's here for. That's all it's about. It's nothing more than that. Yeah, you can enjoy your body. It's definitely been more enjoyable for me to be on the slimmer side, just because I can feel my hip bone, and it's easier. I don't get as winded when I'm walking, and I like the sensation or the feeling of my body. I like this, I like certain things about the structure of my body. But at the same time, there's always going to be things that we want to change. There's always going to be things that we want to make different. And that's okay. It's okay to want to have a different body, but to sit there and obsess about it, that's when you have to be careful, because you'll get into trouble, and that will become the achievable thing, the thing you have to get, the thing you have to gain, the thing you have to have. And we have nothing. We possess nothing in this world. We possess nothing in this life. You can spend all your time building up your body and making it look perfect and be one of the most unhappiest people around. And I've met plenty of people like that, where they look amazing, like literally perfectly sculpted bodies, but they are some of the most unhappiest people I've ever met. And they have the worst attitudes in life that I've ever met. And I'm like, well, what's the point of that? Like, if you just would re-sculpt your entire persona or your entire sense of being, you'd probably be fine, and none of this physical stuff would matter as much. But that's where your value and worth is based on, is this physical appearance. Yeah. Sometimes when I have those kinds of the pressure builds up in my head and headaches, I do wonder if something's coming or something's about to happen, because I have noticed a energy shift, usually a few weeks before something's coming. So it would not surprise me if that's tied to an event or something that's coming. But it's really hard to kind of pin down, because not everybody is the same, and some people just have headaches because they got some crap going on. Yeah, I would say, and Miss Jenny's like, yeah, you shouldn't ignore yourself in a mirror, but just when you see yourself, give yourself a good compliment or give yourself something positive. Like, say something positive to yourself, because you just need to decondition or deconstruct the process of how you respond or react to yourself. I love my filters. Steph, good questions. Can you talk more about vaping for you? I don't, and my husband does, and I'm trying to accept and understand it. So with the vaping thing, it really depends on why you're doing it, or what it serves for you. So for myself, when I vape, it's usually in the evenings, or if I'm off on a day and I just want to be lazy for the day, I may vape. I have a very active mind, and I can get very caught up in everything that is going on in my brain. And I also have a resting bitch face, like by default, even though y'all see me smile most of the time, I do have like a resting bitch face problem. And so when I'm not on camera, like my face is very like it's just very like serious. And it's not because I'm upset or I'm angry, but I notice also that sometimes my partner will think something's wrong, and he'll be like, "Are you okay? What's wrong?" I'm like, "Nothing, I'm fine." But it's just because I have resting bitch face. I even had a cousin who used to make fun of me because of it, because they always would ask me like, "What's wrong with your face? Change your face." And I'm just like, "Oh my God, leave me alone." And so now I'm like, I'm just a bitch. So that's why I have resting bitch face, because I'm just a bitch. So I'm just owning that, just so that people can leave me alone about it. However, what I notice is with vaping is whenever I vape, and first of all, I don't vape to get high or vape to completely black out. I don't do that. I don't like that feeling. I don't like the feeling of not being in control. So I don't like not being in control of my faculties. I don't like not being in control of what I'm doing. I don't want to be like that person. So that's not what I do it for. I just doing it because it basically is like a nice, it's like a, it's almost like taking, for me, and I can only speak from my perspective, because I'm so caught up in my mind and my brain, and it's constantly going. I can meditate. I can sit and meditate for a good 30 minutes to an hour, but sometimes I just don't want to sit there and meditate. I just don't want to do it, just because I'm like, if I go for a walk, for me, that's my meditation time. That's me being in the moment, being in the now, and I use that as my meditation. Sometimes I just want to get from here, very active, overactive brain that's really, really pumping, to, okay, let's lighten it up, let's loosen it up. And so for me, it's almost like being in a vehicle and like loosening up my seatbelt so it's not so tight. That's what it feels like in my brain. I don't vape indica blends. I vape sativa blends, and they're usually hybrids or blends or sativa blends, just because I don't want to lose the activity in my brain. I love the activity in my brain. I love the thoughts and the patterns of energy. I love all of this creative processes that occur in my brain. I love it. It's very, very fun. Actually, it's my kind of fun. But I also sometimes can get very caught up in certain worries or concerns. And again, I can meditate, and that will help me. The problem with meditating is that I tend to have zero personality after I meditate. I will sit there and I will meditate, and when I'm done, I'm completely quiet. I don't really talk. I don't really interact. I don't really engage much, and I just have zero personality. And it's boring. I feel bored with myself. So I don't really care to just meditate just for that. If I meditate, it's because there's a specific reason that I'm doing it. So for me, vaping is more of just okay, I'm going to lighten the load a little bit. And so what it does is it simply just opens up that ability to just take a breath in a way where I'm not consumed by my thinking processes. And that works for me. So it's like having like a nice glass of wine. You feel a little looser. You feel a little bit more, expressive. You feel a little bit more flowy, and I enjoy it. That's the way it works for me. I don't do it to get high. I don't like the feeling of getting high. I don't do it because I want to completely black out. That's not why I do it. Some people do. Some people do it because they numb and they want to be completely numb to the world. I don't do it to be numb to the world. Now, granted, in 2020, I definitely spent more time being numb than I'm used to, but it was a rough year for a lot of people, and it was a way for me to cope through the deaths that we were encountering and people that were dying. So I mean, even then, like last week, I had a cousin who passed away last week from COVID. His son passed away last year from COVID. So things are still happening, and I've found new ways of coping that don't require the sense of ignoring or pushing away what is, because when you get into a state where it's like, you know what you're seeing, you know what you're experiencing, you're hearing it left and right, and then you're trying to warn people, and people are just not doing enough to help themselves. There's this level of like, I failed at what I was supposed to do. I failed at saving lives. I failed at helping people. I failed at keeping people safe. And so it was more of an angry with myself. And so that was a me thing, not necessarily. But then of course there's the loss, and you lose people. that was hard. So 2020 was a hard year. And for me, vaping helped me through some moments where it was way more challenging and way harder than I anticipated or expected or was prepared for. Today, I don't really vape to go numb. I just vape because it's like a nice glass of wine at the end of the day, and I can just, okay, cool, breezy, I'm done with my work. I can go on and focus on other things, and that's what I do. I also, again, the strain that I vape is significant because it allows me to go into my mental creativity, and I love the creativity in my mind when I have vaped a little, because it allows me to have other things come into my consciousness that I don't normally have the easiest time accessing because I'm so focused on like real world stuff. So that's pretty much it. So that's what works for me. But the problem is that some people, I know people who vape to completely numb and just completely, I mean, they're literally numb 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And that is not living, and you're basically ignoring life, avoiding life. That's no different than being an alcoholic. That's no different than being on pain meds 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And I know people who have operated that way, and that's not the way to do it. So if you're going to vape, it has to be something that you have a balance with. If you don't have you have to respect this thing. You have to respect these things. It's almost like respect alcohol. You respect medications. You don't overuse it. I could easily become addicted to taking my Adderall for my ADD, but I don't, because I respect it. It is a tool. It is not something that I should take every day, to be more active, to be more engaged, to get more achieved. Like, no, I don't need to do that. Like, I can do it on my own. I don't need that to push me. I just need to focus when I'm working. And so you have to find a balance with things in this world. Everything should be balanced enough. And so your joys, the food that you enjoy, have some balance there. Don't become too consumed with a certain type of food. Walking, physical activity, have a balance, don't overdo it. If you're going to vape or drink alcohol, have a balance, don't abuse it. There's a difference between having balance and abusing things. And so that's my answer to that. I mean, it really just comes down to the person and what they function. But I know people who they numb themselves, and they're numb all day, every day, because they cannot cope with reality and they're going through a lot of trauma. And I understand it, but you still have to deal with the trauma. You still have to process those experiences. You can't ignore it or avoid it. By ignoring or avoiding it, you're depriving yourself of an opportunity to gain a deeper understanding and something that may be more beneficial to you than the ignoring of it. So I always tell people, like, once you're past the initial painful experience of it, then start to like dig and understand it further and start to try to make sense of it, because there's more to it than what is the initial painful experience. Let's see. Yeah. Yeah, people, it's funny because when I was heavier, people would pick on me for my weight. And then when I lost weight, and all I did is just walk and eat better, people now say that I'm too skinny. So they're saying I'm too skinny, but then when I was heavier, I was too big. I was like, well, I don't care. I was like, I don't really care what people think. It's really coming down to what I feel good with, and I'm fine with where I'm at and with what I'm in right now. So I'm fine with it. Miss Jenny, my doctor wants me to evade anxiety. I would suggest, vaping is not the healthiest way to do it. People were smokers forever. Vaping is probably just as bad as smoking. So it just comes down to your preferred method. You can also do gummies, and I would start with half or microdoses. I do gummies, but I do microdosing just because that also helps with anxiety. So, and that helps me sleep because I cannot get to sleep easy enough. Like I'm like, okay, I'm shutting down my brain, starting to get to sleep mode, and my brain won't shut down. And if anything, the moment that I relax my mind, there's a little in-between state where if I relax my mind, all of a sudden I start having random visions and stuff. I'm like, oh my God, I'm like just trying to go to bed. I don't want to see anything else. I'm like done enough today. Like get out of my, and so I just try to shut, and so it actually, the edibles will help me to shut my brain off so I can go to sleep. So I just use it for sleep sometimes. My partner's the same way. He suffers from anxiety, so he also uses a gummy to help to get to bed. MK07. It's like, Ferny, earlier today someone mentioned their dog Bruce. Do you ever see an animal in spirit as a human? I don't. The personality is somewhat, there are some similarities in the personality when you're tuning into an animal versus a person, but it's not as complex. There's a lot more complexity and self-awareness with the human mind complex versus an animal mind complex. Usually animals are just so appreciative and so thankful and so loving and just want to be with us. Like, those are the primary instinctual energies that I get from animals. I don't really fixate on their thought processes because they don't have the same thought processes as I can relate to. This is why I don't normally, whenever I do like if an animal comes through in a reading, usually a human spirit mind complex will communicate on behalf of the animal just to give me the information. Just because I don't always relate to the animal's sense of thoughts or their thought process, because they don't think the way we do. They don't operate the way we do. I can feel the energy. I can definitely feel the emotion. The emotion for an animal, I can understand an emotion. I can understand an animal through an emotion. Like when I'm talking to my mama cat or when I'm connecting with my mama cat, I know what she's feeling. I know what she's thinking. I know what she's wanting. I can feel it. It's an energy. It's an emotional energy. But to actually break it down to a thought pattern is not what I don't relate to that in that same way. Yeah, cannabis has been definitely stigmatized. I 100% agree with that. I think it's one of those things, like, it's one of those things where, again, it comes down to a balance. I actually would prefer, I prefer cannabis over alcohol. I do not like alcohol, quite frankly. I don't really care for wine or alcohol. I'm not a drinker. When's the last time I had alcohol? The last time I had alcohol was probably in early 2020, and maybe I had like a glass of wine, and I didn't care for it because I didn't like it. So I mean, I like it in the moment, but then like the way it affects my body, I just don't care for it. It's just way too. I don't like losing control again because I can be a bit of a control freak sometimes. Yeah. Yeah, I am Tiffany. I hit a blunt 3 times a day in a day because it actually lifts me up and expands my mind. All types of amazing thoughts come through my mind. I 100%, I know where you're going with that because I've had the same experience. Like opening a tunnel of the unknown and seeing beauty of everything. Don't like alcohol. It gives me a bad feeling. Yeah. I hate the smell of cannabis. I just hate this. I cannot stand the smell. And if I find something that I vape and it smells like it, I just go, I hate the taste. I cannot deal with it. So I like stuff that's a little bit like lighter in the all of those things. I don't like it. But I appreciate the opportunity the effect grants me because, it does what it does. So I use a sativa. I actually currently don't even use like a traditional THC or a Delta 9. I use a Delta 8. So it's legal in most states. Actually, every state is legal because it's not on the substance list. It's becoming a popular thing. You just have to be careful because you have these small companies or small businesses that just do some shoddy things. So you want to go with a reputable brand. But I use a sativa blend because it allows my mind to become more active. The indica, I'll be like asleep within an hour if I do an indica. I just don't care for indicas. So yeah, so that's pretty much it. Let's see what else here before I drop out of here, y'all. So I want to see what I feel like we spent the whole time talking about cannabis. Messages, people are still wanting private readings. 'Cause, 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 'cause these are all private readings. Yeah, private readings. Yeah, Carmen. Yeah, I get it. My husband buys Delta 8 here in Houston. Yeah, it's Delta 8's just the way to go around it, and I prefer it because last year with COVID, I wasn't gonna drive to Colorado. I wasn't gonna drive in. I have not been inside of a small space often, so I avoided small spaces, especially now that Delta's going around as well, so it's becoming an issue. But I usually would drive up to Colorado. Now it's legal in New Mexico, but businesses aren't carrying it or selling it yet, so that probably will not happen until next year. But my way around it, because I discovered Delta 8 and I was like, that's interesting. And I started to, there's an online store that I buy it from, Chi. It's called 3Chi, and there's two options that they have available. Actually, there's several options in vape form that they have available, but I usually do the gummies that are the sativa blend or the berry blend. I think it's like a berry blend. There's another one called Comfortably Numb, but it makes me sleep. So I'm not trying to just go to sleep. I want to let my mind, go into wandering mode and stuff. So that's the one that I use, and I like it. It's been working fine for me. But that was my get around because I wasn't going to drive to Colorado and go into a place to buy anything. I was like, no, I'll just wait until it's like until I get the vaccine, and then I can go. But now the Delta is getting around. I'm just gonna have to wait again, but that's okay. Yeah. All right, guys. I love you all. I am done for today, so I will be back on Friday for the secret study group. So we'll do that on Friday. Okay. Love you all. Oh, by the way, I'm gonna be on vacation next week, so I'm taking the week off next week. I'm not gonna work at all, so it's my next vacation. So I won't be on my lives next week, but I just want to give you all a heads up. But I will be back on Friday as usual. I might even do a little bit of extra time. We'll see how I feel.